voters are nonpartisan organizations, and as such, we do not support or endorse political parties or candidates. We're here tonight to inform, and we thank you for your participation in this very important process. We would also like to thank Joyce Bruce and Jennifer Navarro for the AV swap meet, their refreshments and drinks. Before we begin the debate, we have Music and Kids here to sing the national anthem and to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand.
Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. That was beautiful. And now, I'd like to introduce to you tonight's mediator, Mike McMullen. Mike is the publisher of the Antelope Valley Press. He has worked in news, media, television, and broadcasting for many years.
Thank you. I want to thank all of you for coming to this debate tonight. Your interest in the process and participation in this forum shows your commitment to our electoral system. Please honor that commitment by remaining quiet during the forum. No video, no audio recordings, no streaming are allowed in this event. If I perceive that that is going on, I'll stop the proceedings until somebody turns the device off. Please hold your applause until the forum is over, and please refrain from any interruptions or protests. We understand that people are passionate about this race on both sides, but please don't allow an outburst to reflect badly on your candidate of choice or to keep people from hearing your candidate's response. This forum will be approximately 60 minutes in length. We have 4 different sections. The first section will be 2-minute opening remarks from both candidates. The second section will be a series of general questions. The person asked the question will respond with a 90-second answer, and then there will be a 60-second rebuttal. We will alternate questions between the candidates for fairness. The third section will be a series of rapid-fire questions where the candidates will have 30 seconds to respond to each question. At the end of the fourth section will be 2-minute closing remarks from the candidates. Time limits will be denoted with a series of flags, and our timer tonight is Larry Colton. We have a real low-tech system. Green card means you have 1 minute left. Yellow cards are shown at 30 and 15 seconds, and the red card is shown at the end. It's just like driving. I would ask the candidates to please remain civil and constructive during the forum and avoid any disparaging remarks about your opponent. Candidate order was determined by a coin toss before the forum began, and tonight, Steve Knight will begin the proceedings. Congressman Knight.
Thank you all for being here. I want to thank the League of Women Voters and the Palmdale Chamber of Commerce for bringing us to Larry Cimboli's house. We cherish this. Lily and I have a great relationship with Larry Cimboli throughout his whole life, and it's always great to be in the Cimboli Center. You know, I think what I talk about is what we have done while we've been in Congress. What are the accomplishments? How have I talked to the community? What kind of wins have we done for the community? And what we can bring back to the community. And that's what I think this election is going to be about. We said when we went into Congress that I would be the aerospace voice. I would talk about how we can bring aerospace to the forefront. We would talk about our veteran care, and we would talk about small business. That's exactly what we've done. So I went on armed services. That was my first request. I went right to the leadership and I said, I want to be on armed services because this is aerospace central. I want to work directly with our military. I want to work with the generals and the rank and file to see what we can do to accomplish missions for the military. Then I want to work with veterans. We brought forward a groundbreaking, new, innovative process right here in the Antelope Valley for our veteran care. And in small business, now I'm a chairman of a subcommittee that I work directly with a Democrat from Florida, hand in hand, shoulder to shoulder, to work on small business so that we can make it better for everyone. So I think, 30. I think what I've done is exactly what I told you I was going to do. We would work with everyone. We would work to make sure that we're working in a bipartisan manner. We try to bring as many wins back to the district as I possibly could. And if you see the record, you can see a record of accomplishment. I thank you all for coming here today, and I hope this is a spirited debate. And I thank Katie for being here.
Candidate Hill.
First of all, I want to thank you all for being here. I want to thank the Chamber, and I, as always, want to thank Congressman Knight for having these debates. I want to start off with a question to you all. How many of you feel like Washington is working? Perfect. There were just a handful. How many of you don't? That's why we need change. We all know Washington is broken, and for far too long we have had big special interest groups, corporations, Washington insiders, and a broken system of political parties, neither of which has been committed to the people that they're supposed to serve. It's time for a change because we have too many issues that are facing our community. Here in the Antelope Valley, 1 in 5 people are living below the federal poverty line. We have some of the highest usage of the Medi-Cal programs. We have some of the lowest, we have an unemployment rate that is twice that of the national average, and we were the community that was most affected in the entire country by the subprime mortgage crisis, and we've still yet to recover. So that there are more people who are underwater on their mortgages still in the Antelope Valley than anywhere else in LA County, according to the County Assessor's Office. These are real problems facing our community, facing our generation, facing people across the country, and we have to make some serious changes for us to be able to address those on a large scale. I'm from this community. I grew up in the Antelope Valley. I moved to Santa Clarita when I was 11. My dad is a police officer. My mom is a nurse. And I spent my career working on some of the toughest issues facing our society, working on the issue of homelessness and affordable housing. And I'm going to take those skills to Washington to finally start addressing the issues that we care about and be a voice for real people. Thank you.
we proceed, I want to remind everybody, please hold your applause until the end. We're now going to enter the second section. My first question is for Congressman Knight. Congressman Knight, many have said that our borders must be secure before we can begin a broad overhaul of immigration laws. How do you do that?
Well, I think immigration and healthcare are probably the two issues that affect everyone in our community, and they're probably the most difficult discussions that we can have. We've talked about different ways that we can talk about, we can fix immigration, and we can kind of move down a path of immigration. The very first thing that's got to be attached to immigration is a stronger border. Everyone knows that, and everyone agrees on that. If you saw the television meeting with President Trump and Leader McCarthy and Leader Hoyer from the Democrat Party, they all agreed on that. How do we do it? We can bring in new technology that we've used in Afghanistan and Iraq. We can build a wall in certain areas, and we can have new technologies in other areas. But the amount of drugs that come over the border, the amount of crime, the amount of sex trafficking and indentured servantry, and the possible threat of terrorism that can go over the border, we know that the border has to be secure. I've been to the border in about 4 or 5 different areas. There are certain places in the border where you can just step over a 1.5-foot wall and walk right into the country. So if we're going to have a secure border and have a talk on immigration, then let's attach that to anything we talk about, whether it be DACA, TPS, or any other group, and I think you get a lot of bipartisan discussion that is healthy.
Thank you. Candidate Hill.
Sure, I agree that border security is absolutely crucial for the same reasons: sex trafficking, drug trafficking, possible terrorist threats. But what we're doing right now is spending our resources in the wrong places. We're spending it on separating families. We're spending it on sending people back home, or back to what is not ever and has not ever been their homes since they were little kids. And we're sending them to, we're sending people who are in desperation, who have been living here and working here for, in some cases, decades, when they haven't committed any crimes, because of a system that is broken. We have to have real immigration reform, and Congressman Knight's party has been unable to deliver on that for far too long, even though it's a promise that's been made over and over again. This is about our commitment to our neighbors, and there's no reason that we can't have smart, tough immigration law that is actually about helping people at the same time.
Next question for Candidate Hill. How can Congress help to curb gun violence?
Sure. So first, we need to recognize that there has been for far too long an over-influence of the gun lobby and of groups like the NRA. I know that just recently Congressman Knight said that he'll no longer be taking NRA money, so I hope that means that he'll start supporting legislation that is about gun sense. That doesn't mean I'm not for the Second Amendment. I fully support the Second Amendment. I'm a gun owner myself, and I grew up with guns. So did my husband. But we need to be for universal background checks. We need to be for closing the loopholes that make it possible for someone who's in a serious mental health crisis to get a weapon. We need to extend waiting periods, and we need to make for uniformity across all state lines. And what we especially don't need to do is make it possible for people to buy a weapon with easy restrictions in one state and get a concealed carry license and then bring it across our state lines. And that's something that Congressman Knight has voted for over and over again. So I hope with your renewed commitment to not take NRA money, we'll see those kinds of changes happen as well.
Congressman Knight.
So gun violence is one of those issues that does hit home for me. I was a police officer for 18 years. I actually was a police officer for 18 years, and I was on the street, and I saw many shootings, and I was in many situations that were very dangerous because of guns. What this Congress has done and what I have voted for is a very comprehensive mental health package, because we know that people that go into schools or they go into places and they're going to shoot people most likely have a mental health issue. So we have a very comprehensive package that I have voted for. It's a mental health package that has moved its way through Congress, and I think that's one of the very first things. The second thing is to be a responsible gun owner. That means you lock up your guns. That means you're responsible with your own guns. That means you don't go on Facebook and put a picture of your guns on a kitchen table and have a discussion about them. That's not what responsible gun ownership is about. So if we're going to have a real discussion about guns and how we get to stopping gun violence, the very first thing is going to be mental health, That's the way this Congress is moving. And the very next thing is have a real discussion about responsible gun ownership.
Next question for Congressman Knight. What would you do to ensure that all citizens have the ability to vote without unnecessary obstacles?
So citizens in this country, that's part of your civic duty is to go out and vote, right? That's your voice. That's who you're going to see who's going to be on your city council. That's who you're going to see is going to be president or Congress. I take it very seriously. Since I was 18 years old, I have voted. I have voted in all elections. I don't just vote in the presidential election, I vote. So I think that the civic duty is there. How do we make sure that everyone can get to make sure that their voice is heard? So what we've done in California when I was in the legislature is make sure that when people show up, they get to vote. I think an ID was the proper way to make sure that people who are there and they're saying, I am Joe Schmo, then you can identify them. That wasn't accepted in Sacramento. So the next thing is let's make sure if you can't get to a voting poll, you can be like me. You can be a permanent absentee voter. They send it right to my house. I sit there, I get all my information, I fill it in, I put a stamp on it, and I mail it off. Now, we have made it very easy for people to vote, but there still are some obstacles to make sure that there's not one person out there that can vote, isn't voting. So this year, the party that's in charge in Sacramento has made it so you can pick up people's ballots. You don't have to sign under perjury of law, so now we can go out and pick up people's ballots. So I think we've moved in a direction of we want everyone to vote that can vote, and we're making it as easy as possible to do this. Candidate Hill.
Yeah, I think it's great to hear that Congressman Knight is for voting, but I think that it's clear that his party over and over again wants to suppress voters. And here's what we know. We know that the people who are the least likely to vote, people of color, people who are of lower income levels, younger people, are the ones who are most likely to vote Democratic. And that is something that we have to take ownership of and start to address, and we are. We're organizing around it, and this election, I think, can make a huge difference in that regard. But things like voter ID laws far, far disproportionately affect people who are disadvantaged in some way. They make it almost impossible. We've undermined the Voting Rights Act in so many ways since the Republicans have been in charge, and we have to ensure that those protections are in place. Voting is a fundamental right, and we need to protect it as such, and we need to do everything that we can to ensure that people are getting out to vote. I am surprised to hear that Congressman Knight is also in favor of the new laws that California and the party in charge in Sacramento has passed, because they're Democrats, and I don't think the entire time that he was in Sacramento did he vote with the Democrats on a Voting Rights Act, or voting rights legislation.
Next question for Candidate Hill. Do you believe Roe versus Wade is settled law?
So I know many of you know this already, but I experienced an unplanned pregnancy myself when I was 18 years old. I had, I was on birth control, and I was in a committed relationship with the person who's now my husband. And it was a huge shocker to me. And because of that experience, going through it, I was faced with an incredibly difficult decision. And I ultimately decided that I wasn't going to have an abortion. But I also knew that that was such a difficult decision that no one could possibly make it with the government could not possibly get involved in that decision. It's one that the woman herself has to make with her family, with the people that she trusts and cares about, with her doctor. I had a miscarriage before it came time to really, I ended up not having to deal with the consequences and the challenges that face a young mom who hadn't graduated college yet, but I know that I'm lucky in that regard. And yes, I believe that Roe v. Wade is settled law. And unfortunately, Congressman Knight has voted over and over again to limit a woman's right to choose, even in the severe cases of rape or incest, and at the same time has made it so that employers can block a woman's ability to get birth control, and so that health insurance companies don't need to cover maternity care.
Congressman Knight?
Roe v. Wade is settled law. It is 44 or 45 years old now, and remember what Roe v. Wade said, that states will be able to do what they want in a session of how Roe v. Wade is settled through the Supreme Court. It is settled law. There is no doubt about that. But let's look at what happened in this Congress in this past session. We did one bill, and it talked about abortions. and it said no abortions after 20 weeks. That was the bill that went into Congress. That bill was stopped in Congress, but that was the one bill that we talked about when it comes to an abortion. You can have an abortion, that is settled law, but no abortion after 20 weeks. So that was the only issue that came up. That was the issue that we voted on in the House. It died in the Senate, but Roe v. Wade, yes, it absolutely is settled law.
Next question for Congressman Knight. What would you do to support the current version of the ACA, including the protection for pre-existing conditions?
So between the ACA and the HCA, there are issues in both of them. We see that the ACA has some issues. We see that the AHCA has some issues. I've talked with many members in Congress on both sides of the aisle to try and get together to try and figure out a way that we can work on health care. Just today, I met with healthcare professionals, and we talked about new ways. What have we done? We put a veteran program right here to help in healthcare for our veteran population so that they can get healthcare right here instead of driving over the hill to Sunset or to West LA. So we're trying to affect our area right here. And lastly, what I will say is if we go to a program that my opponent wants to do, and we do Medicare for all, even the Democrats here in California have said it'll cost $400 billion. For the country, $3.2 trillion. California Democrats have already said we would have to raise your taxes 200%. That's not what the federal level will have to do because we will have to do something for that. So I'm trying to work with both sides of the aisle. I don't call them Democrats and they're bad. I don't call them Republicans and they're bad. We're trying to work together to figure this out. This is a very intricate system, and you're going to do it in steps. ACA was not the step. AHCA might not have been the step. We've got to work this thing together so we can get health care for everyone.
Candidate Hill?
Yeah, I completely agree that we have to do it in steps, and ultimately we need to get to a place that includes healthcare for everyone. This is an especially important thing for me. I've been on the end of it when you don't have healthcare. My husband, Kenny, who's here tonight, had a spontaneous pneumothorax, which is a spontaneous lung collapse, shortly before we got married and during a brief period before the ACA took effect, that when he didn't have health insurance. And he ended up going to the hospital for 11 days, having to have an emergency surgery, and we ended up $200,000 in medical debt. So this is a real challenge. Medical debt is one of the #1 causes of bankruptcy. And if you look at costs, actual cost savings that happen when we fully insure people in our country, it is far, far more than $3.2 trillion. However, what we have to recognize too is that these are incremental changes that need to happen. But what we shouldn't do is attempt to repeal what's already in place without a plan to replace it. And that's exactly what Congressman Knight did multiple times, dozens of times over the course of the time he's been in Congress, and especially this past time, which would have taken away health care from over 60,000 people right here in our own community. It would have gutted the guarantee of the Medicaid expansion that was so crucial here, and it would not have had protections for people with pre-existing conditions. And this administration right now is attempting to undermine the pre-existing conditions element of it. Getting rid of the mandate has made it so that the health insurance companies cannot sustain covering everybody. So there has been so many attempts to make it impossible for this healthcare system to work, and we need to have people who are committed to going in there to fix it and not undermine it.
Next question for Katie. What can be done to bring back a spirit of bipartisan cooperation in Washington?
Sure. So I grew up, I'm pretty much the definition of bipartisan in my household. My dad is a lifelong Republican. The first time he ever voted for a Democrat was in the primary when he voted for me. And my mom was a Democrat. She's here tonight. So I think that what we have here in our community, which is one of the most equally partisan communities in the entire country, we're almost exactly Democrat and Republican, with a huge number of people who don't consider themselves affiliated with either party and who would vote either way depending on the person and depending on the issues that they feel are important. We need to have somebody who's going to go in and say that they'll work with either side. I recognize that if I am elected, Kevin McCarthy is going to be my neighbor, and there are many issues and initiatives that I'll have to work with him on. But I also recognize that the vast majority of the representatives from California, the ones who are working on the issues that affect us as a state, like affordable housing, are in healthcare, they're Democrats. And so we have to find a way of working between the two. And I think that people like me and like others like me who are running across the country are the ones that can start to lead that change and to say that we're not about representing a party. We're not accountable to just one party. And unfortunately, Congressman Knight has voted with his party and with Donald Trump 98.9% of the time. So he likes to talk about being bipartisan, but unfortunately his votes don't track with that.
Congressman Knight?
So let's talk about votes, and let's talk about how we track. During these two debates, I've heard a lot of things about Republicans are bad, Republicans have done this. Remember, Republicans are almost 40% of who we
I'm not talking about Republicans. I'm talking about Republicans.
Please don't interrupt.
Okay. So remember, in answers, if you say Republicans are bad, that's 40% of the people that you are going to be in charge of if you are elected. We talk about everyone. If you want to be a leader of everyone, then you don't say Republican or Democrat, you say, how do we move forward? So that's what we've done. About 80% of our bills are co-authored by Republicans and Democrats. That's because we're in charge of Congress right now. We have the majority. Why would I need that? Because we need to go in and make sure that people understand what we're trying to do. It's not a Republican idea, it's not a Democrat idea, it's going to help people. I think you might want to co-author it, and that's why 80% of my bills have been co-authored. This thing that keeps coming up about this 98% of voting with President Trump, let's look at the Lugar Institute. The Lugar Institute is a very low bipartisan institute that looks at the 435 people in the House and says, who's the most bipartisan? I am 69 on that list. That means I am in the top percentage of most bipartisan. That means we reach out to Democrats, we reach out to Republicans. When I write a letter, like we just did with Congressman Panetta from up north, it was a Republican and a Democrat moving together. So it's not a, they're bad, it's a, let's move together and let's get something done.
Next question for Congressman Knight. You mentioned earlier, aerospace has always been the backbone of the Antelope Valley economy. What would you do to ensure the protection of this important industry?
There is no doubt that that is the biggest economic engine in the Antelope Valley. And I always say this, the Wright brothers on December 17, 1903 did something great. After that, we took over. And that's what's happening right here in the Antelope Valley, Aerospace Valley. We look out for not just the big guys, but the little guys, and we talk to everyone to find out what kind of an amendment can we put into the National Defense Authorization Act to make sure that we're moving forward with products that are going to help our warfighters. Right now, we have the National Defense Authorization Act that is moving forward in the appropriations process. Next week, hopefully it will get done, we'll get it through, we'll get it signed by the President. I have 9 amendments in there. All 9 were accepted by Democrats and Republicans. I even had an amendment in there that was not accepted by the chairman of my party and the ranking member of the Democrats, and we still got it through. So we've been very, very successful, including getting a brand new tower for Plant 42, because Plant 42's tower is seismic and wind problematic. How you can have that in the Antelope Valley, I don't know. So we put something in there, and they're building a new tower at Plant 42.
Candidate Hill?
Excuse me. I come from a long line of people who worked in aerospace. My dad was in the Air Force. My grandfather was someone who worked in aerospace, worked on the space shuttle and the Apollo series. My stepdad, who's here tonight, worked on the B-2 bombers, also in the Air Force. And I'm fully committed to ensuring that this economy that has been fully rejuvenated here in this community, it continues to be so. I think that we recognize the importance of the thousands of jobs that have been created. And to be honest with you, I think that this is something that I would not try to undercut Congressman Knight on at all, and I appreciate what he's done for our community here.
Candidate Hill, next question. What do you think needs to be done to take better care of our veterans?
Sure. So, first of all, veterans are hugely disproportionately affected by the issue of homelessness. And as the executive director of PATH, while I was there, we helped thousands of veterans move off the streets into permanent homes, including a huge number of veterans out here in the Antelope Valley. We have veterans are coming back with PTSD, with disproportionate rates of mental health challenges, of substance abuse disorders, of an inability to find jobs that are truly sufficient to meet the living wage requirements. And we have to invest in them. And that isn't something that can just happen through Veterans Administration policies and programs, because we have a number of veterans who have been discharged, dishonorably discharged, or otherwise discharged because of mental health and because of addiction. And those are some of the top issues that are caused by veteran service. I come from a family where every generation of my family has served in the military going back to the Revolutionary War. I've dedicated my career towards it, and I plan on being a voice for veterans when I serve in Congress.
Next question for Congressman Knight. If the White House fires Robert Mueller, what should Congress do?
Do we get an answer to that question?
I'm sorry.
It's okay. Don't take any time.
Now you know the next question. I'll think of another one. Okay. I'm sorry, Congressman Knight, your answer.
So I have 3 stepbrothers who are in the military. I have a brother. I have a father. I have a lot of relatives that have been in the military. I was in the military. I am a veteran. We work with veterans very closely. One of the things that I think is the most important to our community is working directly with our veterans. I have 2 of the best caseworkers that are in Congress that work directly with veterans. We work on hundreds of cases every month directly for our veterans. But let's look at a couple issues. One of those amendments that I talked about was for opioid addiction for people who are in the military or getting out of the military that have this addiction that we know is a scourge across this country. There is an amendment from me to put more money into making sure that our veterans and our military are not getting hooked on opioids, and if they do, they get to the right service. The groundbreaking VA urgent care initiative that I started right here. It's only in the 23rd and the 25th district, right here in Southern California, nowhere else in the country where veterans can get care right here instead of having to drive over the hill. The last thing, we need a booming economy. The greatest thing Ronald Reagan said about welfare is you want to help them? Get them a job. A booming economy does that. We have that right now. 4.2% growth, 3.9% unemployment. The last statistic we saw on Friday was the highest wage increase since 2008. That is a great thing for our veteran community.
Okay, Congressman Knight, you get to keep talking.
Okay.
I'll restate the question again. If the White House fires Robert Mueller, what should Congress do?
Now, I've been very, very clear on the Mueller investigation. I think the Mueller investigation should continue. We've been very clear that I support that. I also support a timely investigation. So let's make sure that we're not trying to do a political stunt here by pushing something out too far and not getting to the investigative deal that you're supposed to be doing. But we've supported the Mueller investigation from the beginning. We've also talked to other congressional members and said we should support this. This is how this investigative process moves forward. And let's support a timely investigation by the Mueller team.
Candidate Hill?
We absolutely have to support the Mueller investigation. And frankly, if the president fires Mueller, then we have to have a Congress that's going to hold him accountable. And right now, we can't count on that. With the Congress that's currently there, we simply cannot count on that. And that's the fact. And it doesn't really matter how Congressman Knight's going to vote on that if we don't have others in Congress who are going to. We have to have a Democratic majority. We've made it clear. The people who are in Washington right now have made it clear that they are far too partisan to do their duty when it comes to the safety and integrity of our government.
Next question for Candidate Hill. Some people feel the upcoming midterm elections are a referendum on President Trump. Do you agree with that assessment?
No, I don't think that the upcoming elections are a referendum on Donald Trump. I think that they are a referendum on a broken system. I think Donald Trump is a symptom, not the cause of a broken system. And that why people elected him in the first place across the country was out of frustration for Washington that's not working for us. I think that, as we're canvassing, as we're talking to people, the issues that we hear about the most are healthcare, including mental health and substance abuse services for everyone. We hear all the time about the increased costs, the cost of prescription drugs. We hear about the cost of housing, of the inability to count on our infrastructure, of the unavailability of jobs. I mean, I keep hearing from Congressman Knight about this booming economy, but when we talk to actual voters here in this community, they're not feeling the effects of it. The stock market is not the same as the economy. So we have to address that. We have to be sure that we are actually supporting middle and working class families and having policies that support that. And so, I think that this is what people are voting on. They're not voting on a referendum on Trump, although every single day that goes by, I think we recognize how problematic this administration is on a number of different fronts. But truth be told, if I'm elected and if Donald Trump is still in office, then I'm going to do everything I can to work with him to get things done for this community if that's what it takes.
Congressman Knight?
No, I don't believe that it's a referendum on the president. I think that it's going to be individuals in their different congressional districts who are going to have to either show a case or they're going to have to be run over by somebody that will come in and show a better case. I honestly believe that. I think that that always happens. We are in a midterm of a new presidency, and we start to see a lot of people talking about things that they might not have talked about in other times, because we have a new president and people are looking differently. But this isn't a referendum. What this is going to be is individual candidates and individual congressional members having to go in and show their case. What have you done for your community? Have you got wins for us? Have you worked with both parties on issues that affect us? I think if you look at me, I have bills signed by President Obama. I have bills signed by President Trump. Over 80% of my bills are co-authored by both parties. So I think you're looking at a candidate that works on both sides of the aisle to try and benefit this district and this community.
Congressman Knight, what can be done to reduce the number of homeless people in our community?
So we all know that the homeless population here in the Antelope Valley especially has exploded over the last 10 years. You can drive down certain streets in the Antelope Valley and you can see a much bigger population of homeless than we have seen, like I said, over the last 5 or 10 years. This is a very harsh environment. We go to about 115 degrees, we go down to about 10 degrees. It's very difficult for somebody who doesn't have shelter to be able to survive in this. We know that. So the cities of Lancaster and the city of Palmdale have done kind of their own issues on how they will address homelessness. The best way that Congress can affect this is making sure that we get money down to the local level so that the local level, whether it be the counties and cities, can help the homeless population. CDBG funds are maybe the best mechanism for that. We had a cut in CDBG funds. I put an amendment in to put $100 million into CDBG funds to bring that level back up to where it was the year before. My amendment was successful. My amendment continued through, and that's the CDBG funds that will directly affect this community.
Candidate Hill.
Sure. So, of course, homelessness is my background. I spent a decade working on the issue. And my legislative experience comes from passing Prop HHH and Measure H, which have brought critical resources to our communities to address homelessness on a scale we've never seen before, including, for the first time, a drop in homelessness in LA County in years. Homelessness is related more than anything else to the housing stock issue. We have a 1 million unit shortage in California and a huge number here in our communities, and the housing inaffordability is getting higher and higher every single year. We have a tax plan that just gutted the most important funder of affordable housing. That's the low-income housing tax credit program. It was spending millions of dollars to really leverage state and local investments to make it possible for us to address this crisis and to invest in these units. That's gone now. That's been wiped out, and we have no plan to reinvest in that capacity at the federal level. And that's because instead of investing in our communities, we're putting money into the 80% of the tax benefits go to the wealthiest people in this country and to big corporations and to foreign investors, not to the issues here. So $100 million in CDBG funding is a drop in the bucket compared to the tax breaks that were given to big corporations, and especially to the one that I can't wrap my head around is foreign investors. These are not people here in our communities that need the help. And so if we want to address the issue, we have to address a number of things, whether it's healthcare, substance abuse, and mental health. There's no one-sided issue to it, but it's poverty and income inequality. And when you're talking about...
Okay, thank you. Next question. What is your stance on the extension of DACA?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yes.
Yes, DACA needs to be extended. There's no doubt about that. I think that we have over 3,000 people who are DACA recipients here in our community in this district. And we can't just extend it, but we need to provide a true path to citizenship for people who have been living here for most of their lives. And I think that should be part of broader immigration reform.
Congressman Knight?
Well, I would disagree. I don't think we need to extend DACA. I think we need to fix DACA. We've been talking about this for years. We've been talking about the DACA population. We've been talking about the TPS population. It keeps going back and forth as a political football. We shouldn't do that. I've been very clear on what I believe in the DACA population, that the DACA population should be able to stay here in the United States. They should be able to stay here on a process where they are here legally, and then they can move toward citizenship. But remember, when people use this term of path to citizenship, that is a political term. That is not a real term. The people that come over here and they want to immigrate to the United States, there is a way that they immigrate. So when we say path to citizenship, people start thinking, well, are you going to put them in front of me? Or are you going to do something that makes them in front of the line? Remember, to become a citizen in the United States, you have to be here legally for 5 years. You get your worksheet after 5 years. Then you can apply. You go down the worksheet. If you check yes on all those worksheet issues, you then can go in for citizenship. There is no path to citizenship. That is how it works. When you start talking else, then you start putting other groups in different situations. So let's have the DACA population stay here. Let's make them legal. If they're here for 5 years, they can work toward their worksheet, and they can go on that process. Same with the TPS.
Next question for Congressman Knight. As a member of Congress, what can you do to support small businesses in your district?
So I am the chairman of contracting and workforce development in small business. I went to Chairman Shabbat when he was the chairman of small business, and I said, well, I'd really like to be on your committee. And he says, you know, you only get on my committee if I asked you to be on your committee. So he came to me the next day and said, would you like to be on my committee? I said, yes, I would. So we have made that a priority, that small business. About 97% of the workers here in America work in a small business. Now, I don't identify the federal level of small business of under 500 people. I say small business probably in the 50 range, where you're going down to a store and you're seeing employees there, and it's almost a mom and pop type shop. That's about 70% of the employees here in America are under 50 employees. So we have several bills, including this last bill that was just signed by President Trump, to bring more money into loans for small businesses so that they can expand and they can create more opportunities for kids like mine and yours to be hired in a small business atmosphere. The other thing that we have done, we have reached out to small business and said, how can we help you? So we've created a couple bills that give them more opportunities, that give them the ability to reach back out to us in Congress through our work source and through our committees, and say when there's a problem, we want to deal with it right there. So we have written about 5 bills on small business that has come right from the small business community. Done it.
Next question for candidate Hill.
So I respond to that, right?
I'm sorry, I don't know why I keep doing that. Go ahead.
Sure. So my sister's a small business owner. In fact, she's having her grand opening after being open for about a month for her shop in the next couple days. She's on Sunday. So I understand the issues that small business owners face. And after our last debate, I talked more to small business owners to say, what are the #1 issues that you're facing? And, access to capital is certainly an issue. But the ones that I heard the most were healthcare and the fact that they don't feel like they can afford healthcare. My sister is in a huge bind right now because she makes too much money to qualify for subsidies or to qualify for Medicaid or Medi-Cal, but she certainly can't afford the hundreds of dollars a month and the thousands and thousands of dollars in a deductible to be able to be successful. And so much of her money is going into that as opposed to going into her business and investing it where it matters to her. The other thing is taxes. The tax plan, there was so much hope that the tax plan would actually benefit small business owners, but instead it has given the vast majority of the benefits to large corporations and a very, very small amount to small business owners, because most small business owners are not ones that are filing in the same way that these large corporations are. So if you look at the kinds of businesses that are getting the benefits, the most benefits go to businesses that are making between $250,000 and $500,000 in revenues or higher. So that's just simply not helping people in our communities. And I think that, we have to address this holistically. No issue can just be dealt with in a single way.
Thank you. Okay, now the next question for candidate Hill. What are your thoughts on sanctuary cities? Do you support the withholding of federal funds to those cities that do not cooperate with the federal government on immigration enforcement?
So, first of all, I want to say that this term of sanctuary cities is a political term that has been used to polarize us and to create countless problems. And I don't think that the term itself is reflective of how people feel. Coming from a law enforcement family, of course we have to make sure that we're doing everything we can to keep violent criminals out of our communities and to make sure that they move on once we've identified them. But what we don't want are families, people who have come here for refuge, who, although Congressman Knight talked about the process, the legal process of coming here, it's 100 years for someone to come from Mexico or from many cities, from many countries throughout the globe. And people are coming from violent situations. So that's not something that is valid that we can say, oh, come here legally and then apply for the process. But I think that the bigger issue is that we have a president and so many people in Congress who ran on a dog whistle of blaming immigrants for the problems that we're facing in the country. And so that fear is what led to this label of sanctuary cities, and it's not productive, and instead we need to be talking about real immigration reform, and that's going to allow us to address the problem.
Congressman Knight?
Well, I'm so glad it doesn't take 100 years because I'm married to my wife who immigrated here from Chile, and we've been married for about 29 years. I went through the process with Lily, and it was a very difficult process. She was here legally, and we went through the whole process of making sure that we went down to immigration and did the paperwork, and then she went through her citizenship, and it was an ordeal. It really was. And we had to spend the night on the immigration steps 2 nights in a row because you had to be one of the first 50 legal people to go through the doors. Now, I can't imagine what it is for somebody who doesn't have status in here and what they have to go through. But we have talked with them, and we've talked with groups of them, and that's why we have the opinion that we do on DACA, on TPS. But I can tell you a quick story. We had the Governor Brown, come over to our lunch about 1.5 years ago, and we said, please don't sign this bill. Because when you sign this bill, you've got 49 other states that are not doing this. So when they go into appropriations or they go into something else, they're looking at us and saying, you're doing something that is not following the law. And so I said, don't put us in that situation. You already have cities in California that are doing this. From every major city, from San Jose to San Francisco to LA to San Diego, are all doing it. So don't do this. So I think that he overstepped by doing that. And California was already in a kind of quasi-policy of doing what they wanted without showing the federal government.
Next question for Congressman Knight. Do you think the confirmation of Judge Kavanaugh can continue without hearing testimony from his accuser?
No, I've supported the Judiciary Committee. They are the investigating committee. We have a process here in the United States of how we confirm our justices for the Supreme Court. This is an interesting issue that we're going through, and this is something that we have to take very seriously. I think that Senator Grassley has asked that Dr. Ford come in and testify. They're talking about that back and forth. She said she couldn't be there on Monday, so I think that they're going to talk about what day she can come in. And I also believe that Senator Grassley and the entire judiciary have told her we can do this in an open process, we can do this in a closed process, but we want to understand what the testimony is here. So, but remember, this is through the United States Senate. This is the way that we confirm justices. And the judiciary has the ability to kind of go in and be a quasi-law enforcement committee. They have subpoena powers, they can do the things, they can go through the investigation. So I think it's working through the process.
Candidate Hill?
So first of all, I want to talk as someone who has been a victim of sexual violence, and I know firsthand how difficult it is for a woman to come forward. I think there are several problems with how this is being handled right now. The first of which is that she was asked to come and sit right next to Kavanaugh and to to handle the interrogation that's going to be coming at her from people who are accusing her of lying or for making this up for political purposes. And that's such an incredibly difficult thing for a woman, which is why so many women never come forward, or why it takes decades in many cases. So I think, to say that, we just need to go through the judicial process is incredibly problematic, and we have to find a better way of doing it that includes protecting the victim. And I think we need to be asking some really serious questions about who this person is, Kavanaugh, and I frankly think there are many problems with his confirmation, not the least of which is this.
That concludes this portion of the questioning. We will now go into a rapid fire round. Each candidate will be asked a question. We'll have 30 seconds to respond, and we will start with Congressman Knight. What can be done to protect Social Security and Medicare?
Well, many things. I've been a staunch supporter of Social Security and Medicare. But remember, this is the first year that we are eating into the reserves of Social Security. If we don't talk about Social Security, then it'll continue to go in a place that we don't want it to go. So we have to be adults about talking about Social Security and Medicare. Remember, if we don't protect Social Security for this generation, it will break down for the next generation or the next or the next. We don't want that. We want it to be secure for this generation so it'll move forward for the next generation.
Candidate Hill, you call yourself an experienced change maker.
Is it different questions? Yes. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Yes.
You call yourself an experienced change maker. What does that mean?
That means that I have worked on one of the toughest issues facing our society. I've grown an organization from a $5 million a year organization to a $50 million a year organization with 400 staff working across the state of California. I have developed and passed major legislation amounting to $1.2 billion in capital and $3.5 billion over 10 years in services.
Congressman Knight, you co-authored the No NATO Withdrawal Act in July. Explain why this is important and explain the fear you have of the White House withdrawing from the alliance.
Oh, I don't believe we should withdraw from NATO. I've visited many NATO countries. I've talked to leaders in NATO countries, whether it be military or political leaders. We have a very close-knit relationship with our NATO leaders. That is why we are in a safer world that we have NATO in place. I don't believe that withdrawing from NATO would ever be the right thing for the United States.
Candidate Hill, you won't accept money from corporate PACs. Why is that important to you?
I think that the reason we have so many problems with people not showing up to vote is because they don't believe that our political system is working for them. Because over and over again, we see politicians who are accountable to big corporations, as evidenced by the tax plan, and not to the people that they're supposed to serve. So I believe in trust as the most important quality in a politician, and I think that you have to walk the walk. You can't take corporate money if you say that you're going to stand up to corporations.
Congressman Knight, how has your background in the military and law enforcement influenced your decision-making as a congressman?
Well, I think I'm very mission-oriented. I think being a veteran and working in the United States Army makes you mission-oriented. That's the problem. That's where we're going, and that's what we've got to fix. As a police officer, it's 1 out of 12. You show up to see the woman, see the man, see what the problem is, and try and help fix the problem. Same thing in Congress. But you got to work with a lot of different people and make sure that they understand where you're coming from and understand where they're coming from.
Candidate Hill, you have the endorsements of the Democratic establishment. How will that influence your decisions if elected?
Well, on the bright side, I'm not dependent on the Democratic establishment for fundraising, which is why you're accountable to people. I know that my money is coming from individual donors. That allows me to be independent, and I think that's one of the reasons that you've seen me out fundraise Congressman Knight for the last 3 reporting periods, and the money that's coming in to fight for him and to save his seat is all coming from the Republican establishment. So you're going to see that affect our votes. I can be an independent voice when it's going to be much harder for him to be.
Congressman Knight, what is the accomplishment you are the proudest of during your current term?
During the current term, there's no doubt about it. It's the urgent care for our veterans. This was a process that was brought forward by a gentleman who's very respected in the community. Talked to me, we talked to the VA, and we've got this established to help our veterans. Now, when we talked about this process, we knew we would be butting heads with the VA. We also knew that we had to be diligent on working with the VA and making sure that they know We're not trying to privatize the VA. We're not trying to do anything like that. We're trying to get better care and more accessible care for our veterans. So without a doubt, that is going to help our veteran population like nowhere else in the country.
Thank you. Candidate Hill, you have stated that our tax system needs to be more equitable. What changes are needed to achieve that?
The first thing is that the benefits that we're giving need to go proportionately to people who need those tax cuts. We have this massive income inequality that we're facing as a country that leads to countless problems. And we need to, any kind of tax reform, the vast majority of the benefits need to go to the people who are struggling with poverty, who are in the middle class. The middle class pays the vast majority of, it takes the vast majority of the burden of taxes. And we have tax policy over and over again that doesn't benefit us.
Congressman Knight, what are congressional Republicans' plan if they maintain their majority in Congress?
Well, we're going to try and continue this booming economy. There's taxes 2.0 and taxes 3.0 that are following, but trying to make sure that this economy continues to boom and that there are still opportunities out there for people that are going to work. One of the biggest problems right now is we have more jobs than we have people to fill these jobs. We've got to look at how we're going to fill those people into those jobs. It might be a 4-year university, it might be an accreditation, might be a program that's working right here in the Antelope Valley. We've got to figure that out.
Candidate Hill, why should people vote for someone who has no experience in Congress?
I think we can all see that Congress isn't working. Do we really want people who have that kind of experience to continue to go back and do a bad job? I mean, I think that speaks for itself.
Congressman Knight, what would you do if you retain your seat and the Democrats are in the majority?
I would do what I did when I was a legislator in California. My 2 years as a senator in California, I passed more pieces of legislation than any other Republican in the Senate. That means that I had co-authors on both sides of the aisle. That means I worked with my Democrat partners. That doesn't mean I went in there and I said, you know, I'm a Republican, you're a Democrat. We are not working together. We worked very closely. We got a lot of things done.
Candidate Hill, explain why the homeless has become such an important issue for you.
Homelessness, to me, is the culmination of so much of what's wrong with our society. You see how everything else ties into it, from income inequality to the criminal justice system to mental health and substance abuse to housing. And so working on that issue it has given me experience in all of those different factors. And so I think that it's also an issue that we're seeing more and more of in our community. But I don't think that it's the issue that I'm running on. It's the issue that I have experience with, and that I can translate that experience to all of the other things that work into it.
Congressman Knight, how is the new tax law, in your estimation, going to affect workers in the Antelope Valley?
Oh, we've seen it. We've seen it help workers in the Antelope Valley. I've had countless people come up to me and say thank you for what went on with the tax bill. Remember, nothing is perfect. And people who are running for office who have never been in office always say they can do something perfect. This bill is a booming economy because of the tax problem that we had. Even in the last debate, my opponent said that this bill, yes, it does save people a couple $100. What is a couple $100? We heard from Leader Pelosi, it's just crumbs. Crumbs here in the Antelope Valley mean more gas tanks to get over the hill to their job.
Thank you. Candidate Hill, you have been accused of promoting ideas that will lead to an increase in taxes on gas. Is that true?
I don't know what ideas they're referring to, but I do know that I have, I think the fact that I'm being attacked on gas and on a state legislative issue shows you that there's not a whole lot to be attacking.
Please don't. You can silently enjoy yourselves. Congressman Knight, how do you respond to the fact that Democrats have targeted you as a high-profile target for removal in this election?
Well, there's a couple of things. I mean, this is a very closely registered seat where Democrats and Republicans are very close. I think that you're seeing that in California. because of policies in California might be different than policies at the federal level. So I think it's pretty easy to just look at the registration and say, that's where we're going to go. Republicans are going to try and defend, or Democrats are going to try and take. That's all over the country, and this is just one of those seats.
Candidate Hill, do you support a Medicare for All program?
Look, I support getting health care for everyone, and I believe that that means moving towards a Medicare for All program. What that looks like is what we should talk about. I think that Medicare in and of itself has a number of challenges. But I think the first thing that we need to focus on is a healthcare system that works right now while laying the groundwork for something in the future that's sustainable and that actually helps people.
That ends this round, and now we go into the final statements. And I would like to say to the candidates, if any question was brought up or anything you felt you didn't get to answer fully, you can address that in your closing remarks. And first up is Congressman Knight.
Well, again, I want to thank the Chamber and the League of Women Voters for putting this forum on. I think they're very helpful. I do. I think that you're looking at two people who are running for the 25th Congressional District, and one has a lot of experience and one is brand new to this. And you're going to make up your mind on which is better. If you call a plumber to your house and they say, this is my very first day I'm doing plumbing, but I'm going to give it my best shot, I think that that's problematic. But let's just look at some of the words that have come out of the last couple debates. We've talked about the tax plan. We've talked about what it has done. I've said it's a booming economy. I said unemployment is under 4% for the last 4 months. In the last 49 years, it's only been under 4% 9 months. You've just lived over the last 4 months of almost half of that time. We have a very, very booming economy where wages are going up. On Friday, they said these are the highest wages since 2008. So let's look at words too. In the last debate, my opponent agreed. Well, that's only a couple $100 that families are getting. Right here in the Yellow Valley, we need jobs, and we've always talked about jobs. But 70,000 people go over the hill for work. A couple $100 makes a big difference. Now, we know that it's more than that in the tax plan, but even if it is only a couple $100, that's 5, 6 tanks full of gas to get to work and to get back. I told you I would work on the aerospace community and to veterans. The groundbreaking veteran urgent care program that we have, nowhere else in the country. This will be a pilot for everywhere in the country. What we have done for the aerospace community is unprecedented. We've worked directly with the companies to say, how can we help? What can we do? And then we work directly with the military. What is the best process, the best platform for you to be successful if we send you into combat? Again, I thank you very much for coming out tonight, and I appreciate your showing up.
Candidate Hill. Candidate Hill.
Sure. There are a couple things. First of all, I want to say thank you so much to the League of Women Voters, to the Chamber, to all of you for showing up, and as always to Congressman Knight. I also want to address a couple things that were mentioned. First of all, I believe Congressman Knight said that he supports Social Security when he's on the record for saying that Social Security is a bad idea. I think that's just a characteristic example of how he changes what he says based on his audience and based on what the political feeling is at that moment. I don't believe that we can trust somebody like that, and I think that we have to have somebody who actually has our backs and who's consistent. Someone who is truly accountable to the voters of this district, not to the special interests that fund his campaign, not to the special interests that fund the conservative interest groups that are. So I believe a couple of things. One is on the tax plan. The other thing is we have, he talks about the couple $100. $20 a month. $20 a month. I love having an extra $20 a month in my pocket. I've been poor. There's no doubt about that. And yeah, it helps. But when you compare that to the billions of dollars that are going to corporations and that are going to people like the people, frankly, that I see in West LA who are kind enough to donate my campaign, those are the people who are getting the massive tax cuts. And I don't think that's fair. I don't think that that's equality. I think that we have to have someone who's fighting for the real people in this community. And when you talk about experience, let's talk about the real experience of truly helping people. Not going in, working in a cog in a machine, but trying to change the system. Because we know, y'all raised your hands, this system is broken. And we need people who are truly going to go in and try and fix it.
That concludes this candidate forum. I want to thank both of the candidates for their time tonight. You're helping all of us to make the right decision at this important time. I also want to thank all of you. I also want to thank the Palmdale Chamber of Commerce for hosting this event and the League of Women Voters. And finally, I want to remind you, vote on November 6th. Thank you.
I found out, I asked my doctor about that. And he was like, it's nonsensical. He goes, when you put on those glasses, you realize how much better you see. And that's what it is.
I'm not known for rhythm. Hey everybody, can y'all hear me? Okay, cool. I want to thank y'all for joining us tonight. We're going to try to run a really quick program and do our best to get everyone out of here by 8 o'clock. Does that sound good? Yeah. Perfect. If there is anyone who has not signed up yet, please do so at some point. We've got computers on the table. How many people are here because they're excited about electing Katie Hill to represent them in the 25th? That is awesome. That is also why I'm here. I thought this is not Amway. What's up? No, this is not Amway. But if you do have an interest in selling, promotional and leadership developmental tools, just talk to me. Because we're trying to run a quick agenda so that everyone can enjoy the remainder of their evening, I would like to put the agenda up here so that we can all be on the same page about it. And then I also have some community agreements that I just want to run through real quick. Does everyone know what one mic means? Anyone?
One person talking at a time.
There we go. There it is. One person talking at a time. Mark Morris, what is beginner's mind?
Beginner's mind is being fresh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If this is the first time you've ever come to a meeting like this, if this is the first time you've ever come to an electoral activity like this, or if it's not the first time, let's just all start fresh. Let's all be gentle with ourselves and each other. Let's all look at this as a learning process. Sound good?
Yes. Yeah.
All right. This third one, challenge yourself. That's me. That's me asking you to ask yourself to put yourself out there. You're going to get out as much as you're going to put in. And we need folks, if we're going to put Katie Hill in office, to challenge themselves to help make it happen. Sound good?
Yeah.
Sound good?
Yes.
Yeah.
Woo.
Cool. Number 4, big questions at the end. Let's save the any major big questions until the end of the presentation where we can handle it, or maybe we can handle it one-on-one. Little stuff is okay, clarification is great. We just want to make sure we're moving. And then, wait, this is one of my favorites because it means 2 things. The first meaning of it is, why am I talking? So if you find yourself contributing a lot to the breakout groups or to the discussions or asking a lot of questions, ask yourself, why am I talking? And if you've been talking a little too much, maybe just take a step back and allow other people to step forward. The other meaning of this is, why ain't I talking? So if you find yourself chewing on your thoughts, but you think some of the thoughts and questions you have should be voiced, take a step forward and challenge yourself to do it. Do these all sound like things we can live with for at least an hour? Yeah. No. Okay, cool. All right, so we're teaming up. Who's in the room right now? We've got Food and Water Action. Raise your hand if you know about Food and Water Watch. So, Food and Water Action is relatively new. We are a C4, which to the IRS means we can spend money on unlimited political activities. Food and Water Watch can't do that because people receive, deductions for their donations to a regular nonprofit. So what this means is we can finally throw down, as Food and Water Action, on the issues we care about in the communities that we're working with, on things that are explicitly electoral, like knocking on doors and talking to voters to put people we believe in office. If you have any questions about that, hit me up afterward. I am much more excited to introduce our partners tonight, Ground Game Los Angeles. Killa and Steve, if you want to come out and tell everyone about yourselves. Woo!
That's right. Some of you may or may not recognize me. I was part of the Aliso 18 that was arrested at the gas facility. Very good. And Steve here we've been working together on Ground Game for a little over a year now.
Yeah, I was met Jessica Salins, who ran for City Council District 13, whose campaign was what fought Spawn Ground Game LA. Did a lot of canvassing with her, and we're excited to take those same tactics and strategies that we've been working on so hard and bringing this to up here and finding it, beating all of you basic organizers.
Absolutely. So Ground Game is a community organization based in kind of sort of Hollywood-ish area of LA. We started, exactly as Steve said, out of a city council campaign. A bunch of folks got really, really energized and decided that we wanted to ask more of our government. So there was a young woman who was running at the time, and we built this amazing volunteer base. And even though we didn't win the seat, we built a community. And after that election, over a year later, the community is still there. We're organizing on behalf of local businesses and all of the residents of Southern California, doing whatever we can. So what's really exciting about this for us is that we get to be involved again with a candidate that we feel really strongly about, and that's super exciting. So we're really, really happy to be here.
Yeah. And, Katie, like the candidate that we, tried to get elected in City Council, which is people power candidate. And that's why you are all here, because Ground Game LA doesn't take corporate donations, Katie Hill doesn't take corporate donations. And because we don't have the big money, we need the big people power. And you folks are all here tonight because you are already involved in your community. You already care about getting somebody like Katie Hill elected because you know that she's going to represent you and not somebody else.
Yeah, this is an amazing opportunity, and it's going to be so incredible to work with a community that's organized under such immense pressure. So we're really honored.
Cool.
Thank you both. Who else is in the room? People of Porter Ranch in the San Fernando Valley. I'm going to put a couple of you on the spot. Lorraine, why are you here?
Because I want to elect great leaders.
Boom. Alex Kim, why are you here?
I'd like to see what Katie stands for. I never met her.
Awesome. Mark Morris.
Oh, to bring balance back to to Congress.
All right.
Get Steve Knight out. Stop the nightmare.
Those are three uniquely amazing things that we're going to talk about tonight. Who is Katie Hill? How do we put her in office if we believe in who she is? And how does putting her in office impact, and I know we all hate this word, but trickle down to all the stuff we're doing on the ground up through Congress? Who's not here? Katie Hill. And I'll tell you why. Food and Water Action is a C4. We are running an independent expenditure on a congressional candidate. You all are a part of history because this is the first time our national organization has ever done that. We cannot directly coordinate with candidates, which means we can't call up the Katie Hill campaign, talk to them about their voter strategy, and then scheme with them on the phone about how we're gonna reshape Porter Ranch. We just can't do that. If you find yourselves wanting a little bit more, if you find yourselves wanting to work with the Katie Hill campaign directly, they have events and canvasses going on every weekend. You can find a calendar of those things on their site.
Sorry to interrupt, but I can actually speak to that because I don't work for the campaign, but I'm one of the field organizers for getting canvassers out to the 25th district. So
what's your name?
Michelle. So we have a lot going on. So if you guys are interested in canvassing, we definitely need people. please see me.
All right, cool. And we're going to make time at the end so that if people want to, they can come talk to you. Great, cool. So raise your hand if you knew who Katie Hill was prior to coming here tonight. Okay, cool. Raise your hand if you've ever worked on any kind of political campaign, whether it was candidates or issues. Oh my God, perfect. And raise your hand if you've ever like knocked on doors for a politician before. Okay, cool. Well, a few less people there. It's all right. We'll talk a little bit more about it. So this is Katie. If you haven't seen her before, we've already endorsed her as a congressional candidate for the 25th. She's running to make sure that the values of this community, the whole district, are represented in Washington. Her campaign, as was already said, is truly grassroots. She doesn't take a dime from corporate PACs. Because she really believes in this new wave of progressivism where our elected officials are supposed to represent the people on the ground. She grew up in Santa Clarita. She went to public schools in the district. She graduated with a master's from CSUN, and she's pretty much dedicated her life's work to helping the homeless. Prior to running for office, she was the director of PATH, which stands for People Assisting the Homeless. When she assumed that role, and PATH is like one of the largest organizations, if not the largest organization in California, providing assistance and housing to homeless people. Second largest, thank you. When she became the executive director, PATH was a $5 million organization. This is like a big talking point, but PATH was a $5 million organization, and under her leadership, it expanded its reach and capacity to $50 million. She's a demonstrated and effective leader, and she has spent her life working on issues that actually matter to some of the most impacted people in California right now when it comes to income inequality, access to housing and other services. Raise your hand if you think that's the kind of person that we need in office. All right, dope. So this is Congressional District 25. You can see that it goes all the way up to Lancaster, to Palmdale, all the way down to Simi Valley. This district typically skews Republican. It's skewed Republican for about 15 years. But there's an interesting trend. Voters in that district, or rather I should say, people are moving into that district for jobs, for affordable or more affordable housing than they're able to find in Los Angeles. And so over the past decade, the demographic makeup of this district is shifting. In 2012 and in this last year, 2016, this district voted for a Democratic president for the first time in quite some time. And in June of this year, the Democratic registration advantage was up over registered Republicans by 4%. A lot of this is owed to the work that Katie Hill's team has done in strategically upping the voter registration rolls. But that doesn't mean we can relax. People who register still need to go out and vote. And so part of getting Katie Hill elected, and probably the largest part of doing it, is making sure those people get out and vote. Yeah?
Absolutely.
Cool. Let's zoom in. Maybe you can already spot where we are, but just in case you could. This is us. Do people know East Porter Ranch?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Mostly ungated, relatively walkable. Some people might want to take a car with them for ease of comfort. What else do we know about this area? Does anyone live here? Awesome. Okay, we got a couple residents in this area. What do we know about the neighborhood? This area was like massively affected by Aliso Canyon, which is actually just right up here. One of the schools in this district, Ankur, where you at? Right. One of the schools in this district, Castle Bay Lane Elementary, that dude and the parents of that school helped us move out of the district during the several months. What else do we know? Could be anything. E.T. E.T. was filmed in this. Yeah. There you go. All right, cool. Let's Yes, also, let's narrow it down. Which registered voters?
Democrats.
Right! These are the people. Food and Water Action, Ground Game LA, we've got access to the California voter file, and we have been able to map out not only Democrats, but Democrats who are likely to vote for Katie Hill if they go vote. And so the mission now becomes knocking on those doors to get them to vote. We good so far? Yes. Dope. Let me just look at my notes. Okay, so what we're looking at here is about 3,000 houses and about 6,000 voters. And in these houses, maybe from some of your previous electoral experience, you've knocked on a door and a Republican answered. I guarantee you that in these houses, there is not more than one registered Republican. So you're not going to get like an 18-year-old who registered for Bernie but lives with two Republican parents who perhaps don't want you knocking on their door. And okay, so we talked about 6,000 people. If we got a quarter of those people to go out to vote, that would be statistically significant. From what I'm able to calculate, that would be about 1 to 2% of Katie Hill's win number. And we are fighting still in a heavily Republican district, so every little bit of percentage that we can contribute to that fight could turn the results of the race. How many people think this looks doable? Challenge yourselves. Oh my God. Okay.
That's why I'm here.
I do too. This is great. So, what can we do? We need to talk to voters. We need to recruit our friends and family to volunteer to talk to voters. We need to accomplish that by door knocking, by phone banking. What else? How else could we talk to people?
Postcarding.
We could do postcard parties. That's cool. What else? Anyone? Creative ideas? Texting. We can text voters. What else we got?
Social medias.
Social media, being super present where it matters. And there, because of the gas blowout, are a lot of like deeply networked Facebook pages where folks are still commiserating on the impacts, the health effects, and what went down, right? We have a lot of avenues to talk to people. Okay, so what can we do right now? Does everyone have a notebook, or does anyone need some paper? All right, cool. People need paper. I would encourage you all to take a sheet, pass it around. I've got some pens, maybe not enough pens. And if these pens could come back to me, that'd be amazing.
Oh, this one's fine. Oh my gosh, can I get screenshots instead? I brought the wrong glasses. It's embarrassing.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to type it in your phone, that works.
Okay.
Whatever's easiest.
Some pens if you want to.
Oh, okay, perfect.
I don't have enough clipboards, but I do have some clipboards. Does anyone need one?
Here you go, sweetie. Yeah, I had to have someone register me in because I couldn't see. I have the wrong ones.
So what we're going to do for the next... What we're going to do for the next 3 to 5 minutes is make a list of 10 or 15 to 20 people that we know in our communities, in our families, if you are people of faith in your religious community, that we could invite to support this cause. So silently write 3 to 5 minutes.
I know. The type of view of the thing. Yeah.
All right. How's everyone doing? Does anyone need another minute? Are we good? I feel like we might be good. I don't hear any protest. Okay, before I jump back into step 2, I would like to tell you the bathrooms are over there. I forgot to do that. And then I would also like to tell you, because I got excited about Katie and didn't say perhaps one of the most exciting things, she supports shutting Aliso Canyon down. It's actually one of the leading pieces in her environmental platform, so she's openly campaigning on it. And she has pledged to co-sponsor the Off Fossil Fuels for a Better Future Act, which is one of the most progressive pieces of climate legislation in Congress. It ends oil subsidies. It electrifies transportation. It phases out oil drilling and refineries across the country, and it provides for not only a way to justly transition our workforce through training programs and a thoughtful planning of how to shutter an industry while propping up clean energy, but it brings some of the most impacted people from across the country to DC to think about how we begin making that transition. It's really great to get a lot of leaders on this now, because there are competing pieces of not so great legislation in Congress that we need to cut off. So, we all made a list, yeah? All right. Now we need to make a plan to contact these folks. So, in the next week, I would say week, is there a time in your day or in your evening or at a community gathering that you're going to be at where you know that you can walk in and actively recruit folks to come work on this campaign? And we'll give you items for what that actually looks like later. But is there a time when you're going to be able to talk to folks in the next week to pull them into this?
Whether that means sitting down and making phone calls or going to a community event, as Walker said, where you know folks will be there.
Yes?
So they don't have to live in the district?
Not necessarily. It would be awesome if they did, but even if they were just people in the San Fernando Valley who were impacted by Aliso Canyon or who understand the necessity of turning Congress blue, I think that would be motivating enough.
We're so close.
All right. If you have that time in mind, write it down on your list. It's a personal contract to yourself. All right. Step 3. You got to know what you're going to say. You got to practice. And you got to talk to people. So, thankfully for you, thankfully for all of us, we're going to provide that time to practice what to say about Katie Hill right now. We have some very basic messaging. It covers who she is, why we might support her, strategically, can she win? What if you're talking to someone who doesn't like Democrats? What do you say then? What are the other issues beyond Aliso Canyon that Katie cares about? What?
This side of it is,
Marlon back here. All right.
We have some extras too, so if you feel like you know someone who would already be really excited about this, you can bring
Actually,
them.
I would like a couple more.
Yeah.
Get it started.
I'll take yours. Here we go. I got an extra one already. Perfect. Actually.
Okay, so
thank you so
what
much.
I would like y'all to do is pair up with the person next to you. And anytime we're talking to people about an issue or about a candidate, there's a secret number. Does anyone know what the number is? It's 3. Because people can't remember a whole lot. And if you inundate them with information, they'll zone out, right? So when you're talking about Katie Hill, when you're talking about an issue or anything like that, you want to hone in on the 3 most compelling points. Typically, those should be things that inspire you to be a part of the action, and that's what you want to convey to people. So let's take a minute quietly to take a look at this document, think about what those 3 compelling things are to you, and then in a minute, we can pair up with the person next to us and just kind of practice a 1-minute pitch to someone about getting them involved or about voting for Katie Hill. Does that sound good? Yes. Everyone's quiet because you're already doing it.
I already know. I'm good. So with my line I've been using. What's that?
We're supposed to come up.
Oh, off this. You know what? I don't have the right glasses.
Okay, so.
I don't have the right reading glasses. I can't read it right now.
What if I don't like it?
I had to have her fill out my paperwork or to my thing. But I know, because what I'm telling my friends anyways is we are this close. Like, we really need to get out there and make a difference. And everyone, as it was just said the other day, we need to step up.
Yeah.
It's time.
There it is.
Mm-hmm.
You got it.
That's a great pitch.
It is.
It is a great pitch.
And people are sick of me saying it. I'm still saying it.
Good.
It's okay because it works.
So we're going to come back in 5 minutes. If at your own pace you want to practice a pitch and then allow the person you're sitting next to practice with you, we'll be off to a good speed. I'll be back in 5.
We need to step up because we are so close.
Right?
To becoming believed. Is that it?
We are. Santa Clarita is really, really close.
Well, pretty soon we're going to be, once they finish building all those homes over there, we're going to connect to Santa Clarita. So we're going to be like,
I know.
City.
Oh gosh. Yeah, I can't say that, but I know what I've been saying.
Yeah, you know,
I ramble.
Health care, senior care, reproductive rights, gun safety, income inequality, immigration.
See, I had friends who were supposed to join me tonight, and they didn't, but it's okay. I have their flyers. They're going to do their share.
There you go. Yeah.
Just if all of us do a little, because like I said, I can't commit to a whole lot right now, but I will do what I can. And if I can get quite a few, as much as my friends, because they say they're passionate about it. So, let's see. And just to do a little bit, if I can get them all to do a little bit.
But I find even people who are sick, who got sick or believe they were sick from it, my neighbor next door,
course.
It's like, I can't get her to do anything.
Aww.
She doesn't work. It's just, I guess she went through a nasty divorce, and then
so it's just
her
kind of.
kids are grown, but they both have diabetes, and she wonders if it's the gas leak. But she has lupus. She was
there you go.
diagnosed a few years ago, but I think it was before the gas leak. I remember asking her because I'm like, it's one of the at the last meeting I went to. That was one of the major causes was lupus.
Really?
And then one of my neighbors had multiple myeloma. And the teacher from Castle Bay and her were, I think, friends from like Temple. And teacher Sherry Weintraub didn't make it. But my neighbor had the same procedure where they harvest your stem cells and then
oh my
put them back
gosh.
in you, and she made it. My neighbor made it.
Just all in that vicinity.
But I asked the net who has lupus, well, doesn't Dory, I asked Dory one day, do you ever think that gastric had anything to do with it? And she says, I don't know. And then Net said, well, she just doesn't want to think about that right now. She doesn't want to deal
Yeah,
with that.
and-
She's just
and-
like so
and-
happy to have her life back.
Exactly, and a lot of us, different things affect differently, and so she could be in a different place, and I get that.
Yeah.
And so, but then that's what you tell the other neighbors, let's help her.
Yeah.
And it's got to be done. It can't happen again.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember she was really fit and frail for a while. And then now I see her driving. And
Thank goodness.
She seems like almost.
Oh, that's nice. Thank goodness.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, that I can't imagine. Like I can't imagine, and just the toll, within one of those families that takes on one family.
Yeah.
So many have been affected, and if they were to all step up and just do a little, maybe you can't do a lot.
Well,
do
I
something.
worked at Castle Bay for 10 years, and now I'm at Darby for 10 years, which is just 5 minutes away. And I just remember when I worked at Castle Bay thinking, seems like, this is a long time ago. Seems like there's a lot of cancer here.
Right?
And we would smell the fumes, the gas fumes.
Oh, you
Even
would?
15 years ago, we could smell
Really?
them. The office would call downtown to the district headquarters, I guess. They would call the gas, whatever. They would always say it was nothing. They're just letting off a little extra methane. They're just letting off a little extra methane. Whatever. They never. But I Googled, just like a couple weeks ago, I Googled mercaptan.
Okay.
And it said it's an organic, harmless odorant in gas. But we're finding out at these meetings, right, that it's really toxic mercaptan, right?
It's kind of scary because different things say different things everywhere.
It's an organic, harmless odorant in gas, so you can smell gas.
And people and I wonder where they got that information, like what was the source?
Yeah.
How's everyone doing?
Because that might help to see what's the source.
Does anyone need a minute? All right. Seems like we're all good. Okay, so we have made a list of people we want to talk to get them involved in the effort. We've made a plan to contact these folks, and at this point we know kind of what we're going to say. Does anyone want to share what their top 3 talking points were?
I can.
Yes. What's your name?
My name's Anna.
Anna.
I can. It's basically, it's all so close right now. And if you could just tell a friend and they tell 2 friends and just do what they can. A lot of people are ambivalent about just even getting out and trying to help. But if you can just get them to commit to just a little, and it'll grow from there once they get involved. That's one thing that I say. And the other thing is, because I'm in Santa Clarita, it's so close. We are so close. And, we do have to step it up, and it'll make a difference.
Right. Anyone else?
That was 2.
Rick?
I got a question about talking points. Is she for universal health care?
Yes.
That's a biggie for me.
She wants to...
Actually, I'll talk to you about that.
All right.
Yes or no?
Well, as far as I understand, she wants to defend and strengthen the ACA, and I think she would be a proponent if universal health care came to that level.
I didn't read it, Becky.
I can tell you Steve Knight is.
Yeah, Steve Knight has voted to repeal.
That's the bottom line.
Right.
Is that?
Yeah.
That's the bottom line.
He's looking to repeal the First Amendment and the
Yeah.
All right, let's bring it back. Anyone else? Top 3 talking points you would use. Mark?
Oh, well, my top 3 is that she comes from, her father is a retired police officer, her mother was a public servant, and she comes from the area, and she will represent the people of CA-25 of this district. But I also ask if they do absentee voting, and if they do, then please make sure to mail it in.
Yeah.
And can I, is there anybody else at home?
Yeah, those are great points. Can we talk to all the voters in the House? Does anyone vote early, and how can we ensure that people are voting? All right, cool. So, are you all ready? of what organizing is, and a lot of what campaigning is easy. These are basic skills that we've learned our whole lives. How do you talk to people? How do you persuade people? How do you motivate people so that people together can get something done? And we have the added advantage of doing something historic, flipping this district at a time in our country where it is probably the most important thing that we could do locally right now. There's another advantage to doing this work right now. There is a city council race for this district coming up in 2020. And for years, we've not been able to challenge those dynamics in City Hall in what has remained a pretty conservative district in Nevada, wherever you fall on the political spectrum. I can't remember the last time Mitch Englander met with his constituents on one of the biggest gas catastrophes in the United States history. And so what we do now will matter in 2 years when we've developed our skills as leaders, when we are familiar with the neighborhoods where we live, work, and play, and where we have a broader community of people who are inspired by the same values. So I haven't asked for you all. I know most of you already. I look around this room and I see people who are leaders in their communities. I see people who sit on multiple committees who teach young minds at the university. I see people who fight for universal health care in California. I see people who have run for office. I see people who are current board members in their neighborhood community boards. And I see people who have been fighting on a strong issue. And so what I want to do is ask everyone as we move forward today to really make commitments to exercise our electoral muscles. Today we laid out a political strategy for how we can talk to people to persuade voters to make a difference in this campaign. We all agreed that that was doable. We talked about who in our community we can influence to bring into this fight and how we're going to talk to them. And I want to ask folks to challenge themselves to take it one step further. I want to challenge folks to take on leading an action themselves. Whether that looks like organizing a block walk in your own neighborhood, whether that looks like organizing a full-blown day, 2 hours, 3 hours of canvassing in a neighborhood, whether that looks like hosting a phone bank in your home that people can come to, or even a postcard writing party. I want to challenge people to take that on in themselves. And I want you to know that like Killa, Steve, and I are here to help you with whatever that looks like, help you in executing, help you in recruiting, help you in organizing. And so now I want to ask you to challenge yourselves. Hands up if you think you could host an event that would help us get out and talk to voters. Even if you don't know what that looks like, because we can help you work through it. Got one.
Does
I got two.
Does it have to be at my house?
It doesn't have to be at your house.
Because my wife would kill me. I'll pull something.
I got Encore. Come on, hands up. Who we got?
And do we have to invite people that we know, even if it's low numbers of people that help out?
Yeah. And we'll help you do it. And we'll help bring other people too.
You help bring other people.
So hands up. Keep them up. I got Richard. I got Deirdre. Yeah. I got Tristan. Awesome. What? Keep it up. I got Encore. I got Lorraine, Spike, Emilio, Mark. Anyone else? All right.
Not yet, but next time I'll probably raise my hand. I can't do it yet.
Okay. All right.
I'm here.
Appreciate that honesty. So folks with your hands up, I want to meet you in the kitchen. I want to meet you in the kitchen like right now. So if you want to shift over there, I'll meet you over there.
So we have
and for folks who don't have their hands up,
going in
who would attend an event that someone hosts?
Yeah.
You're doing it right now.
I call that.
What would you do in the future?
I guess it's so Hey,
All right.
I went to the newest ones.
So folks who are down to help us work on this campaign and attend these events and talk to voters, stay in this room.
They had a big grand
Steve's
opening
going to
this
work
last
with y'all.
weekend, but I went the weekend before.
And okay,
it was crowded.
Let's get to where we need to go.
The hosts are going to go.
What do you tell people when they ask about the gas leak? And they go, we said it's been resolved. And honestly, only one person has asked.
Do you believe that, though? I don't believe that one person's asking that. That's
it's been resolved.
I can't believe
they're still leaking.
And how is that on Google? You know, if you, I just can't understand how they could say that. I can't. And was that just the top search?
Shut me up.
Yeah, but was that just the top search, or was that like further down? Did they all say it was harmless?
They just said it's been resolved, but it hasn't. But it's funny because my daughter, a year ago, June, my daughter bought a little one-bedroom condo.
I have a pen.
Oh, you got a pen already?
Yes, and
Do you have a writing implement already?
If I have to write something small, I'm telling you, I brought the wrong glasses.
Right big,
right?
So anyways, my daughter bought in Playa del Rey a little one-bedroom condo a year ago, June, and I said to the realtor, she almost was like,
right.
I said to her, I live in Porter Ranch where the gas leak is, and when I bought my house 15 years ago, no one divulged the information about that.
No.
And
it was just a big deal.
And I said, I heard the one up here in Playa Vista is like, Judy says it's like the oldest. Ours is the biggest facility.
Yeah, that's what I.
The oldest one.
Not positive, but that's what I go.
But I said something, but I said, but I don't think anyone told my daughter about it. She didn't know anything about it.
Wow.
She looked at me like, we were having the inspection,
that's.
But I don't know.
It's a shame though. This is so sad, and I don't know how they get away with it.
Neil Young. I was listening to the radio yesterday in my car.
See, we grew up with that.
I'm a Neil Young.
I think our generation is.
So I know when we bought our Avalon 3 years ago, you get Sirius radio for a while. So I was listening to it.
Harvest.
I was listening to it, and it was an interview with Neil Young. And then I think this other car we just bought, we have it free right now too. So they were just saying yesterday he married Daryl. I guess they finally ran off and got married. Him and Hannah. They've been together for a while.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, they've been together for a while. And they said on the radio, he...
Remind me again.
They ran off because they're very private people. But they're both... Would you love to have someone who's into the same issues you're into? They're fighting some other
folks in this room have done work like this before in the past. So raise your hand if you've already done it. Phone banking.
I was listening to an interview.
I didn't know that they got married. That's so cute.
He must have just got married because it was on the radio yesterday.
Okay.
But he was always against fracking. I listened to this whole thing like 3 years ago about the fracking.
He's always been so activist. He's always been very active.
He's one of my faves.
Yeah, I think a lot of our faves.
Anyways.
No. I think we all. Everyone's got. Remember when we had cassette tapes?
Cool. So everybody has it for them right now.
I remember 8 tracks.
Yes, I do too. You look a lot younger than me, though. But my brother-in-law, who just retired,
You want to commit to
66 years old, 66, I guess.
So everybody should have 6 of
He came over to our house one day recently.
The way we like to think about
rare.
this is
My sister was
each and every one of us
came over.
committing
And
to
he's
just
a
one day of our lives
And
between
he used to
now
work for
and
Arista Records in the day, and then he worked for, then he did the videos.
What that could mean is it could be just a few hours.
He just retired from Universal.
Okay.
So he came over and he was talking about
just attending a postcard
our albums. We still have them
So what we love to do is just
every
write
album was in perfect condition. And I said, oh, that's right. We used to
your phone number,
buy the
and then what
album.
we're going to do is we're going to put a big calendar here at the end. Folks are going to basically commit to specific days and times of when you're going to join us in the campaign. So go ahead and put your name, your phone number.
Remember recording things off the radio too.
And then we're going to
Press record.
ways to commit.
So he was freaked out because ours was so good.
Name and phone number on each one of the little sticky notes.
We have
I wish I still had mine. Mine got damaged, water damage.
The way we like to think of this is,
so many.
24 hours in a day, right? And if you can commit to 6 4-hour shifts, that's 24 hours. That's one day of your life between now and November 6th, which is really not a huge ask, right? And you can space those out. You could attend the canvas we have coming up this Saturday for 4 hours, and then that you've knocked out one of your 6 shifts between now and the end of the campaign. And if you do one a week for 6 weeks, you're already done before we've even gotten to election day. And so, all of us have different time commitments, all of us have different lives and things that we have to do. I mean, I work a job, a lot of us here in the room are working multiple jobs. Oh, you did. So, you all know what you're able to commit to. But like Walker said, we definitely want to challenge ourselves. we're doing this because it matters. We're doing this because we care, and we're all already here because we care. And so if you feel like you're only going to do 4, maybe push yourself to do 5 shifts. Or if you
So what's the shift? Just a canvas?
So it could be anything. It could be a canvas. It could be attending a postcard writing party. This is just you committing to attending one of the events that's being coordinated in the other room. So whether that's a postcard party or a house party or a phone bank or a canvas is probably going to be the main things that are going to be going on. Yes?
I have a question. I talked to Walker on the phone a few days ago. I used to be from this district, but I live in Echo Park.
Sure.
But my husband works in Valencia, and so he's very influential, and so I'm trying to get him informed.
Okay.
He spreads this at the car dealership he works at Mercedes up there, and tells all the customers to go with this.
Yeah.
I'm kind of coming at it from a different angle, especially because I don't live over here anymore either. But Walker mentioned something about you guys having a Hollywood office or something.
Yes.
That would be a lot closer. Is there something I can do there?
Yeah, absolutely. So the plan is, Ground Game LA has an office space in Hollywood. So if you don't live in the district, or if you know folks who live in the basin that really care about this race and that want to get involved, that were on that list of 15 to 20 people that you're going to reach out to, then we are going to be hosting phone bank events, postcard events in other areas. We'll probably have we are going to have a standing Tuesday night phone bank that's going to go from now until the end of the campaign. And some of those could be hosted in multiple locations at once. And one of those locations will likely be the Ground Game office in Hollywood. So if you have friends who live in the basin or in the valley who don't want to trek out to a different event, we're going to have all these events are going to be up on our Facebook group and calendar, and they'll be able to kind of piece out which ones they want to go to.
So you're going to have it up when you're doing it everywhere.
Exactly. And so all the stuff that's getting coordinated in that room is going to be on that calendar. We're also going to do a physical commitment to it here tonight, right? But every event that we're going to be having coming through from now to Election Day is going to be on the Facebook page as well. So yeah, you'll have local opportunities to do that. Cool. Does folks have any other questions about kind of how this process goes, or anything else?
Here to learn and see what I can do, what I can fit in. Right now, I have a lot of commitments.
Yes.
And I will do something, but I just can't commit at this time.
Yeah. Okay. That's cool. Pardon me?
Are you having everybody?
So we're gonna. So what's gonna happen is we already have a bunch of standing events, right? We're gonna be doing a canvas every Saturday.